sometimes sometimes I'll be looking at the schedule for the show and I'll be like, which are the topics that I'm going to introduce? And I'll be like, dang, that's a hard topic to introduce. Sometimes you just can't beat around the bush. It's no use. So this one is sex work, the professionalization of sex work. And my
Beat around
brother's
the
way.
bush. I see what you did there.
Nah. We ain't have to call it out either. We ain't have to, but you did. And I appreciate you. I'm glad you're here with me. You in tune. I'm glad. It's a tennis match, this thing. But I'm going to let you tell the people kind of the story that had us stumble upon this, and we'll take it from there.
So I was on LinkedIn and I see a post, and the post was that this young lady had put sex work as in her CV, and it caused outrage.
Hold
Caused
on,
outrage.
let me stop you right there. You came across the post itself, or you came across the post in the form of an article? Because these are two different. I'm real intrigued.
You see, what that is, ladies and gentlemen, is two people that have been working with each other for a long time. Thank you, my brother, for catching me. No, I was not searching for sex workers on LinkedIn. What I did do, however, is I did see the post, the post that was indicating around the outrage that that was shown when this person put sex work up onto their CV. And naturally, as this process and this show goes, I bring it over to the team. And I knew that my search algorithms would be completely messed up again, because typing in sex work in Google, turns out there's a lot that shows up. There's a lot that shows up, man. So I'd like to hear what you think about putting sex work in a CV.
Bold move, bold choice. That's where I'll start. But yeah, I think, and the woman's name is Ariel, or the person's name is Ariel. They identify as queer femme, so I'm gonna try and keep that correct the whole way through. But when I first saw it, it made me think of a couple of other things that are going on in the world. But it also made me think like, wow, that's like, at first it's like, that's crazy, that's radical, right? But then I thought like, well, two things, right? As an employer, what would be wrong with hiring a sex worker, right? And it took me longer to come up with like anything real than I thought. But the other thing is, what's braver? To post as a sex worker or to endorse that person's skills?
Well, both take a lot of skill. Both take a lot of bravery. Both take a lot of and you've actually you puzzled me with that one. As an employer, I'm not sure how I'd go about it. On one end, I'd be impressed by the honesty, because a lot of the times as you're going through CVs, a lot of people aren't honest. You know, people will hype up the description of what it is that they do. If someone works at, say, a retail store folding clothes, they would be expert an expert item organizer. You know, something like that's how people decorate words. So the honesty on that, I'd be impressed by. But it definitely does touch on the stigma of sex work, especially now that we live in an age where terms like sex entrepreneur are things that are being said. And, you know, there is many cases of people making absurd amounts of money off of app platforms like OnlyFans, right? So it would be unfair to justify someone taking an initiative to do something on their own that they manage, that they invest in, that brings them income, to not call that work. And then looking at some of the stigma around it, it's hard not to see the obvious fact that because most women engage in sex work, because it's mostly women that engage in sex work, that the stigma is there. Especially when you consider the fact that sex work is technically the oldest profession.
Yeah, there is for sure an irony there, right? But also like we, at least in the Western world, at least from my experience, we like go out of our way to separate sex from our work environment. Like the office is designed to be a very sex-free place, right? We don't always succeed in that. It'd be a lot of harassment that be going on. It'd be a lot of other stuff that be going on. That's cool. Like, you know, it's all consensual. If it's cool, that's cool. But we think of it as places where we don't show our sexual self ever, right? Not to our coworkers. And so that's why I think there's like this visceral reaction to seeing somebody be so on Front Street about it. Um, but yeah, like I said, bro, it's what would be wrong with that with hiring that person? Like from a perspective like you outlined, there's so many aspects of that career that would make you really good at negotiating, that would make you really good at communicating, safety, right? And these aren't things I'm coming up with off the top of my head. These are things that I kind of saw when I was exploring this. But I think the other thing, besides the fact that we're all very uptight and uncomfortable about sex, it makes us squirm and glance around the room to see who's going to talk first, right? But other than that, I think it's the fact that in a lot of places, sex work is illegal, right? And so there's also this, some forms of sex work, right? Prostitution, because sex work encompasses a lot of different things, right? But people immediately, often, as I just did, jump to prostitution, right? And use it as a blanket term. And because prostitution is illegal, there's a conflict there, I think, with the workplace that a lot of people assume, which I think takes us to the idea of like decriminalizing sex work. And is that a good idea?
So the hypocrisy in it is that if you're doing prostitution, it is illegal. However, if you put a camera in that process, it then becomes art, and then it's not illegal. It then becomes porn. So sex for money is not illegal. Sex for money is not technically illegal if there's a camera involved. To all the sex workers, I say to you, keep a GoPro. I'm joking. I'm being facetious, but it does speak towards the hypocrisy of the hypocrisy of those laws, like you speak. And unfortunately, like many laws that we see, people of color tend to be unjustly targeted and at the worst end of that. In New York specifically, most and almost all of the people that were arrested for prostitution or soliciting prostitution were people of color.
I mean, all these issues, right? The across sectors, housing, food insecurity, everything relate back to racism, right? But also patriarchy, right? And all of these structures that put us in messed up positions, and allow us not only to not be our full selves, but to treat other people as less than human. And I think that's what our culture around putting a taboo on sex in general, but specifically sex work, right? And that's referring to everything from strippers to our current, discussions around OnlyFans. We're like, we have to start thinking about the bigger picture, and the bigger picture when it comes to work like this, oftentimes is safety, right? Women are a lot safer and feel a lot safer when they're able to professionalize this career in ways that allow them to create safety, and that's important, right? Like that makes for a better experience for everybody. I think, I would assume, right? I would hope. And so I just think it's really interesting when we can't get past that uncomfortable feeling in order to have these conversations at a realer level. But when you think about the idea of sex work as work, when you think about the idea of decriminalizing sex work for the safety of those, of mainly prostitutes and stuff like that, yeah, what does that make you think about? Because we know a place.
There is a place, and it's funny you speak of this place. Like there are places where it is legal, right? So it's illegal in most states in the U.S., but in places like Nevada and some certain states, it is legal to solicit sex for money, which it does make it very hypocritical. It's hard for me not to address the fact that it seems like to me men are hating that men can't sell sex mainly. There's no men's strip clubs really that are popping out there. There's no dudes out there just slanging it. Gigolos is a niche market. So
I think you're speaking from I don't I think the world's bigger than you think it is.
No, listen. I could be.
I don't know how far you've ever looked into any of those things, but they out there, I'm sure.
No, they are out there. They are, and I'm talking about straight men in particular. I'm talking straight men prostitution as the small percentage of the sex worker sphere. But one of the things that I had to confront about my assumptions on it is the fact that, man, definitely it does make people, it is something that is unsafe, especially prostitution. Like you said, sex work encompasses a lot of things. Prostitution is something that is unsafe, and you think to yourself, man, anybody that's in that place only wants to do it because they're at a last resort, and it's because they have no other choice. And although that might be true for some cases, that's not true for all cases. There are people who do see the benefits and the values of being able to provide sexual services as a job in order for to help people, you know. We talk about how lonely people are right now. We talk all the time about how difficult it is to get a date, how difficult it is to meet people in this day and age, right? And especially when you think about how porn is just corrupting our understanding of what sex is supposed to be. Um, like Miles said, I don't want to beat around the bush about it, but like people would say that sex workers provide an outlet for people to have a safe environment where they can come into spaces and then explore their fantasies, explore their kinks, learn better about how to service their partners. And also, if it's your first time and you know you're finding it really difficult to be able to get that nut off, you could go to a place where they'd be able to coax you in quite comfortably. But that can come if we open up the doors for a more inclusive sex work experience. As long as it's still made illegal, the people that will be participating in it are the people that thrive under illegal circumstances. And that's again brings us back to the point of why is it that a human function is made illegal? And that's why I keep saying it seems to unfairly want to be able to control the bodies of women is what it feels like to me.
That's real. That's real. And I hope y'all out there are having as much fun as I am with all the euphemisms, right? We we like to have fun. But I think you highlighted a lot of really important things, particularly that like there's that unwillingness is extends control over people that we don't like. It shouldn't be up to us what happens with them, right? Especially when they're telling you that they want to operate a certain way. This search brought me into a lot of different places. I learned a lot, right, about the perspective of people who are trying to create systems of safety on the street, about how sex workers are natural allies in fighting against human trafficking, right? They're often the people that get to refer people to services that are encountering people and know can understand who's doing this because they want to and who's doing this against their will, right? Um, and just in general, creating a culture of respect around women that currently doesn't exist, right? I think if we continue to relegate a certain amount of people to this position where we say it's okay to not ignore them and to treat them like garbage because we don't hold the same values, we lower the standard at which to which we treat all people, and I think that's currently really hurting our society in terms of the way that we treat women. So I think we need to elevate the way that we treat everybody. um, I'm glad that when we brought up different spaces, you were able to highlight some ones that are kind of in the U.S. where some of this different kind of sex work is legal. Thanks for keeping it local. You know, a few people probably writing a few things down. But also, the space that I thought was really interesting was Amsterdam, because that's always been a space that I've thought of as like free in that way, right? Particularly the light district is famous the world over for, you know, allowing people to come and fulfill their fantasies in that type of way with brothels and what have you. Um, but I was also like, it connects to this conversation because over there, they getting the same pushback and they're actually thinking about in 2021, the mayor was saying, yo, we about to move this to the outskirts of town, create a, what are they going to call it? They were going to call it a an erotic center, which to me sounds crazy. I like red light district much better than erotic center, but that's a whole nother conversation, right? But I'm just saying, like that pushback that you speak of, that want to control. I think there's a discomfort, but even more than that, there's a clash of like belief systems where a lot of folks, their fundamental belief system says that what this type of work is wrong, and so that's why it continues to be pushed off to the sidelines. And this is an example of that. I don't know if you ever been to Amsterdam. We don't need to get into no detailed stories, but you know, what's your thoughts on this as somebody who spent time in Europe and may have had the opportunity?
Oh, Miles is implying that I bought Sex in Amsterdam. My mom listens to the show.
No,
My mom's never
no.
in
I'm
my
just saying,
life.
have you been to Amsterdam?
I have, and actually,
That's all I'm saying there.
Did you spend money in Amsterdam? If we can have an open, honest conversation about it, dude. I've been to Amsterdam, bro, and I walked down the red light district, and I'll be upfront. And I'm sorry, whoever doubled this pop, it is nasty. The red light district is nasty. It is so nasty. And as a boy, definitely you have these fantasies about being able to be, oh, you get to see naked women in windows. First of all, the people that go to watch naked women in windows are nasty people usually. So you have to stand with people that feel comfortable looking at naked women in windows. Not a comfortable feeling. Okay, there's a lot of trench coat action, if you know what I'm talking about. A lot of
Oh my god.
oversized jackets outside of the red light. It's nasty, dude. It's absolutely nasty. Look, move it, move it. Put more coffee shops over there. And I
Yo, I
understand
didn't.
sex work is employment for people, but like I'm just saying, like personally, I thought it was a super nasty experience.
Well, see, I didn't even know what we were in for when I invited you to share your knowledge. But see, I'm glad I did. Thank you for really bringing us back down to earth, right? In terms of our realistic expectations of the red light district. Some images I might not be able to get out of my head, but these are the sacrifices that we make for the show. It's all good. Um, so I feel you. I feel you. And that's kind of what the residents are saying. They're saying it brings out a seedy population, right? That they want to disperse and they want to relegate to this different area. Folks that operate and are professionals in the red light district don't want to move, and what a lot of what they're saying cites back to safety, right? Where they're saying this is a easier to keep track of people in this populated area. They don't want to be moved to the outskirts where there's going to be less police, there's going to be less activity. They've built a community in this space and a system of support that they don't want to break down. Uh, and it's really interesting to me to like hear like the mayor's perspective, right? He was saying that they don't want the country to be known for drugs and sex. They want to focus more on their history and move this district. But some of these buildings in the red light district have been there for centuries, right? So like we're talking about like 15th century. So it's kind of like it's part of your history, my dude. You can't, but I understand, the Netherlands has a deeper culture that's more about a lot of other things. I just think it's important to consider in this whole conversation the voice of these people that are saying, one, that they need safety in this space, but two, that have so much to contribute in the ways that we all need to de-taboo and stop beating around the bush.
Here's a
Around
real question
sex.
for you. Here's a real
Yep.
question for you. If given a safe environment, would you facilitate funds and pay for, say, a son of yours or relative of yours that's had significant issues being able to be intimate with the partner, right? And wants to be able to get that experience and is unable to do it. Given a safe environment, would you encourage them, facilitate it, and pay for it?
It would be a very particular path that I think took us all the way to me paying for a sex worker to help with that issue. I think I would hope, as uncomfortable as it is to talk to about sex with your parents, that's the dynamic that I know and have experienced, right? Like trying to talk to it with my kid, I would hope that we can create an open enough environment where we can have conversations about why that is and what are their expectations of sex and have they been watching a lot of porn and what's their partner's wants and how does their partner feel, right? So I would think that there's a deeper conversation, and I guess I would be, my immediate thought isn't that the problem is that they're not with somebody who knows what they're doing and can go and get that about them. You know what I'm saying? I would think that there's probably some issues related to nerves or anxiety or expectations around performance that I would want to make sure that it's none of that, right? Before we do something like that.
That's very on nose with a lot of the issues that we're seeing men have, right? So there's a growing number of men in their 20s and 30s who are experiencing sexual frustration related issues like ED or erectile dysfunction. So on one end, they're saying that it's this oversupply of performance enhancing pills that young men are taking. So younger men are now reporting to have sexually related issues. Miles takes a sip of his water. You can infer from that what you want. And so but there is a big mental element. There is a big mental element to it. Go ahead, Miles, explain the sip.
I just
The vulnerable are powerful now.
yeah, big facts, big facts. I'm trying to think of like the most vulnerable thing I can say, which is that like, yeah, sex ain't porn, yo. Like, and we all hopefully get to experience different partners and learn different things from each of those partners. And I'm a learner. I'm
Yo,
out.
sex ain't porn is the most vulnerable thing you could say.
I think that's something that don't get said enough, yo. I think that's something.
I second that. That's my line too. Sex definitely is not porn. I agree.
Come
I
on,
need to
man. You
ask
don't throw the steak straight in the pan. You got to put some oil down, salt bed. What you mean?
I need to ask
I
you
was
something
cooking.
though. I need to ask you something on this line. How were you introduced to sex through your parents? How did your parents have the talk with you?
Nah, my parents was late. My parents was late to the game.
Yes, last week they
They
brought
was
it up
late to the
last week.
game. They was late. They was late. They was my dad knew they was late. My dad knew that it had went and gone. My mom was a little bit more surprised, but and that's part of the problem. That's part of the issue, right? However old I was when I lost my virginity, right? It took them all them years to try and have that conversation and couldn't get it done before I experienced that out in the world. And that's what we got to break down. We got to be able to have these type of conversations, yo. How did your parents introduce the the talk to you?
Dare I say too early? My mom brought up way too early. through song. Through song. Brought up way too early.
Spectrum. So double Dutch.
I still remember the book. We pulled up. She opened up a book, and it was a sexual assault book. Actually, it was my body is my body, nobody's but mine.
It was a sexual assault poetry book.
Listen, I don't want listen. First of all, my mom's an educator, so shout out Momzo for wanting to teach the boy the right
Had
thing.
the resources.
I had the resources, and more so was more protective. You know, it wasn't just like this is what sex is. Just like if anybody does this to you, no, it's wrong. You know, and that makes sense from a parent protective aspect.
Ah, got you. They went that route with it.
Yeah. They went the assault route.
Also an important conversation. But we got while we be intentional about not traumatizing these kids, got to make sure we click the not for kids on this YouTube video. But but it's yeah, man. It's serious. All of our hangups get transferred into our kids when we can't really just hash these conversations out in a real way. And we either too late or too early. It's a balancing act. We got to forgive our parents for that, right? But the goal is to educate ourselves and be better parents and to be more open about those conversations in the future. So many thoughts right now, but I guess the most prominent that I want to get out before we end this segment is think about what your thoughts are on this conversation, right? Like, what does it mean to professionalize sex work, and where are the touch points in your community that you would go and are going to get tested, y'all? All right, for sure. And learn more about sex work, learn more about just like advance your sexual education, whether you're a parent or not. And then 2, if you already on board with that and you already rocking and kind of in tune with what we're saying, then you can go and support the Sex Workers Project, which is a national organization that defends the human rights of sex workers by destigmatizing and decriminalizing people in the sex trades through the free legal services, education, research, and policy advocacy.